He was in, I think it was Vietnam.
I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Sacramento Regional County Sanitation District for Wednesday, October, what is it, 11th, 2017. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll and establish quorum?
Yes, good morning. Directors Ashby, Bruins.
Here.
Frost.
Here.
Guerra, Harris, Hume, Kennedy, Lee.
Here.
McGarvey.
Here.
Miklos.
Here.
Nottoli.
Here.
Orozco. Peters. Serna.
Here.
Villegas.
Here.
Morin. Carr. And you have a quorum. This meeting of the Sacramento Regional County Sanitation and Sacramento Area Sewer Districts is being broadcast live on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel on Comcast, Consolidated Communications, and AT&T Uverse cable systems. The meeting is closed captioned for our hearing impaired viewers and webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. Today's meeting will replay Sunday, October 15th at 6 p.m. on Channel 14. In accordance with Government Code 54952.3, compensation for the meeting of these legislative bodies is required to be verbally disclosed. The amount of $100 will be paid for each member participating today as a member of Sacramento Regional County Sanitation District, and the amount of $100 will be paid for each board member participating today as a member of Sacramento Area Sewer District. Compensation for Sacramento County Supervisors and City of Sacramento Council members is paid to the county and city respectively to partially offset the cost of those governments. Compensation for other board members is delivered to the individuals. Members of the audience wishing to address the board should fill out a speaker identification form located at the back of chambers and hand it to the clerk. Please speak into the microphone when addressing the board and state your name for the record. Please silence your electronic devices at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Orozco, will you please do us the honor of leading us in the pledge this morning?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, again, I'd like to welcome everyone to this morning's hearing of our sewer district board of directors. I want to welcome alternate director Miklos from the city of Folsom. And obviously, I'm not the regular chair of the board. I'm the immediate. Am I the immediate past
immediate
chair?
past chair.
I'm the immediate past chair. But we have a number of our directors traveling today, including our chair and our vice chair. So I'm happy to step in this morning to lead us in a robust discussion of the items before us. So again, for those members of the public that wish to address the board on any item on the agenda, you're certainly welcome to do so. We only ask that you please complete a speaker slip and give it to our clerk. You're also welcome to address the board on any item not on the agenda, and we do have a 3-minute limitation on speaking so that everyone that so chooses to address us has time to do so. So with that, our first item, please.
Okay. Acting as Sacramento Regional County Sanitation District, items 1 through 4 are your district consent matters.
Okay, any director wish to pull an item off for separate consideration? If not, I entertain a motion.
Move approval?
Okay, it's been moved by Director Bruins. Chair will second by Director Orozco. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Very good, thank you. Next item, please.
Okay, item number 5 is comments from the public regarding issues not on the posted agenda.
Okay, I'm not in possession of any speaker slips, and I don't see anyone approaching the podium, so we'll move on to our next item, please.
Okay, item number 6 is acting as Sacramento Regional County Sanitation District Echo Water Project Quarterly Report.
Very good.
Good morning. I'm Vic Chiotani. I'm the program manager for the Echo Water Project. I'd like to provide some highlights from the quarterly report for the Echo Water Project. All right, so go over some of the schedule and the progress to date, financial information, our cost and budget, and talk about some of the significant elements of the project, some of the updates, challenges, and some of the milestones that are coming up for the program. This is a summary of the program schedule. The colors, the yellow, green bars, excuse me, are the planning and design phase, and you can see we're past many of the projects that phase, and the blue and purple bars are the construction and commissioning phases. So you can see we're heavily under construction, although toward the bottom of that chart you'll see several projects that are still in planning and design phases. This graphic just shows some of the interrelations of some of the projects to the 2 major projects. Early in the program, we broke this program up into several projects that made sense. And this just shows, from a schedule perspective, how those individual projects could potentially affect the larger projects, the biological nutrient removal and the tertiary treatment projects. So basically you can see that the projects are on schedule. Even if their schedule slipped a little, we still have time before they would impact some of the larger projects that would allow us to meet our milestones. This is a program cash flow. The darker colored bars are actual cost expended, and the lighter colored bars are projected expenditures. One of the things to note, you could see in the upcoming 2 months a pretty large peak in construction activities. That's really a kind of a remnant of the scheduling program that we use. So one thing for us to watch is if we see something like this coming up in our schedule, it means that there's the potential that some of the projects have not expended as much money as they should have according to the schedule, which means that they're falling behind in their construction schedule. This is just something that we use to look to help us manage overall schedules of the projects. This is This graphic here shows the actual expenditures in the green bars versus our projected expenditures in the orange. And this, the comment I previously made, the green bars being below the orange bars is good, although there is an indication that, again, projects may not have been spending as much money as they should on their schedule. And so again, this is something that we're looking at just to make sure that we keep our projects on schedule, something to alert us. So we are aware of this and working on with a couple of the contracts to get them to accelerate their schedule.
Just a question on that. Are they possibly, rather than being behind, are they just doing something that isn't as costly as they thought it would be?
From what we can tell from where they are with the work and the schedules that they've submitted for us, a couple of the projects are a little bit behind schedule, so they have not been expending as much as they should have been.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
So this is a new graphic I added into this presentation. There is a request to add some budgetary numbers from the last quarterly report. And so the first pie chart shows our overall program budget and the expenditures to date. So we've expended $547 million to date, and we still have a remaining $1.2 billion left to spend on the program. The pie chart in the middle are the construction cost. So you can see we're 24% spent. We still have 76% to spend. So we've got a long ways to go with construction. And then the pie chart on the right we added is actually our soft cost. Soft costs are all the other costs needed to implement a project minus the construction costs. So it's everything except construction cost.
Vic, can I ask a question about that, about the soft costs? Of the 35% remaining, the $117 million, how much of that is outstanding costs associated with design of the tertiary treatment?
Design of the tertiary treatment is close to being complete.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, and so from looking at the pie chart for soft costs, you can see a 65% expended. So that's all the planning and all the design that's been done for all the projects. So that's why you'll see a higher percentage spent on the soft cost.
The reason I asked is obviously because tertiary, in the Gantt chart that you showed earlier, the tertiary treatment construction is at the tail end of the entire project. So maybe I'm thinking about it incorrectly here, but I thought that as the later construction elements of the project commence, we can assume that there was some soft costs right in front of that to complete design for that component. So when did the design of the tertiary treatment actually conclude, I guess?
Let's see, we'll be done with design probably about the end of this year.
Okay. And
we'll be coming back to the board for approval to advertise, I think in December, probably issue bid request for bids in January.
So it's about a third. So of the third remaining soft costs, what is that attributable to? What's that reserved for? What is it?
The remaining soft costs, one of the other graphs, we still have some projects that are in design, but they also include construction management costs, the program management cost, district staff cost for commissioning activities. So, so a lot of all those other costs are part of the soft costs.
So even if they're soft costs, some of them may be. May be accounted as an actual expenditure during construction.
That's correct.
Okay, got it.
That's correct.
Right, very good, thank you.
Just a few general program updates. We are heavily in construction. There is a lot of construction activities on site. Several of the contractors are working extended hours. We're actively coordinating with our plant operations to button up facilities for this winter. A lot of our processes are needed to process high winter flows. Several of our projects have constraints, working windows where they can't work in the winter period, so we can process wastewater through our systems. We're also looking at coordinating coming up shutdown activities, which also affect the plant operations. On the safety side, we've logged over 812,000 hours of work, man hours worked, and we've incurred 6 lost time injuries. From the SRF side, We've been receiving reimbursement payments, nearly $280 million received to date, and we've made our first annual repayment of those loans last month of about $1.7 million. And finally, we've got a couple of process-related projects. Return activated sludge project and our disinfection chemical storage projects are in commissioning, and we're actively trying to get those commissioned before winter. So the next several slides are just aerials of the construction progress. This is, these pictures were, aerials were taken on September 29th. This is an aerial of the site. You can see this is the flow equalization project where we're lining all of these storage basins with concrete. These basins were the ones that we need to store peak winter flows. We're trying to button up the work up in the left side of that picture before winter season. This is the flow equalization, some of the basins that are completed with the lining. These are two of the basins at the front that receive the flows. These are probably much further along in construction. These are a few weeks old. They're actively working those basins. A little bit close-up of a structure in between the two basins. You can see the concrete still needs to be put on the walls and some of the floors, so they're actively working on those.
Vic, could you go back to the other image, previous one? Down in the lower right-hand corner, you can see that there's the berm looks like it's covered with riprap or aggregate or something. It looks like there's a spillway that spills towards the creek. Is that what that is?
Nope, that's, this is the, an access road along the levee, and I think this is just a ramp down. We used to have a road down that our bufferlands people could get through, but essentially this is pretty much fenced all around through here.
Okay, so that's not actually...
it's not a road for process access or anything like that, no.
There's an opening in that levee, and we put the stop logs in the winter to prepare for the possible floods. So it's an access, it leaves it open during the summer, and then winter it gets closed. Yeah.
This is a nitrifying side stream treatment project. This shows the treatment basins completed. We're hydrostatically testing some of the tanks. This project is actually one that is ahead of schedule. They've completed electrical building. You can see transformers here as well. This is a picture of the same project. This is a lime storage building. They're working on a second floor.
I wanted to add one more thing related to that nitrifying side stream treatment. If you remember that that project is going to be complete by early 2019. By then, once that's started, we will be removing about 15% of ammonia will no longer be going to the river. If you remember, this big project was done because of the ammonia issues. So that would be the first installment of removing the ammonia from our waste stream.
This is an aerial of the biological nutrient removal project. Shows construction of the basins. These basin areas, it's about 11 acres of concrete basins that are being constructed. It's a close-up of some of the construction. Those walls are about 32 feet tall. This is a picture of the primary effluent pump station. It's a 330 million gallon per day pump station. Just another picture showing this is some tie-ins from existing plant return activated sludge system. This is bringing back from our existing secondary sedimentation tanks, brings biology back into the BNR process. Oop, went the wrong way. This is our secondary sedimentation tanks return activated sludge project. This is one project that is right in the heart of our process. And these are, we need these tanks to process the wastewater flows. During the summer, we can only take one battery, which is 8 of those tanks out of service at a time. We need to return all of those tanks back in service so that we have the full complement of our basins for wet weather. So this project definitely has some constraints with working in the wintertime. They're actively commissioning, replacing the pumps, variable frequency drives, electrical equipment, getting those buttoned up before winter season, which is actually for us is November 1st. This project is the heavy equipment maintenance building. There is a facility that is in the footprint of the tertiary treatment facilities project. So we're constructing a new facilities to relocate the building as well as a fueling station. That project needs to be completed before the tertiary treatment project breaks ground. Just another picture of the walls going up. So some of our program challenges. One of the things our contractors typically don't look at in much detail is the commissioning activities. And so we're working real closely with them to get their commissioning schedules and plans in place before we get there. So we've sat down with each contractor early before commissioning starts to go through their plans, review it, and to make sure that they're addressing all of the commissioning needs that is required for the testing. We're also working heavily with a lot of the shutdowns and tie-ins. So the projects that are left are really process type related projects that have a lot of tie-ins related. And so we need to keep a certain amount of processes in service because this is a operating wastewater plant. And as one project causes an outage in a process, we have to make sure it doesn't affect another project or the process itself. And so we're coordinating 3 or 4 different projects with all of their tie-in activities, as well as plant maintenance activities to make sure that we can continue to process wastewater and meet the current permit. And finally, I had mentioned about some project slippage, and there are a couple of projects that are a little bit behind schedule. And so we're staying on top of that, working with the contractors, trying to get recovery schedules from them to try to bring them back on schedule. Some of the upcoming milestones, we have quite a few of them coming up. I mentioned the tertiary treatment facilities project will be completed at the end of this year. We'll also complete a bid package for what we call an effluent valve replacement project. And that project will replace some existing valves on our effluent pumps, which will allow us to shorten times for shutdowns, allow us to drain channels. And then we'll be bringing back an amendment for the program management services. That'll be coming back to this board. We're planning for December to extend funding and services for the program management efforts. And then in spring, we'll be looking at contract award for tertiary treatment process. The heavy equipment maintenance building contract will be complete. We'll have the effluent valve project contract awarded, get that contractor mobilized, and then we will be in commissioning of NST and the flow equalization project. So we'll be on the final phase of those 2 projects as well.
Director Nottoli.
Vic, real quickly, in the printed attachment, indicate, I heard you run through all those items, but if I read this correctly, that you were going to bring a series of items on December 13th, and why all of them on that same date? You've got some of those you described, but you also, there's other amendments and relates to BNR project and purchase of certain things, and maybe they all sync up, but why everything going to be loaded up on December the 13th?
On the TTF side, it's a good question. First of all, we only have 1 meeting each in the months of November and December. So there's active negotiations going on in terms of the extensions of the the CM services and whatnot. We have some float for some of them. I think we could move them. For example, the PMO, it's possible that we could go into the next year. But the tertiary treatment, there was a debate whether we should do it in January, first meeting in January or December. We didn't want to lose time for bidding. So if we have December 13th approval for authorized to go out to bid, we can start the bidding early January first week, instead of waiting for the board meeting to take place and take a few days afterwards. That's the largest project that is left to be bid and constructed. And if you remember that we had all the mess with the BNR 2 years ago, 2018, we're trying to avoid that with that. I mean, we just finished the general contractor pre-qualification. So a lot of these are lining up. There's a few I think we could actually move if it's necessary. It's looking like a lot of them loading up on that date.
More than likely, the two construction management amendments we can move into January, so that's not a problem because we're not bidding until January. So those are more than likely, we'll move those off. The program management amendment, we'd really like to get to the December board. That contract really was really funded to go through 2016. We've been able to manage that effectively and you know, keep funds that keep us going through this year, but we are getting close on that. The BNR project amendment, we went with a 1 year. Those are what we call engineering services during construction. So that's the designer to answer requests for information, submittal reviews, those kind of things.
That's Black and Veatch?
That's Black and Veatch contract. And we went with a 1 year funding for that project. So that pretty much is done. So we'll want to get that done as well to keep their services on board.
All right, thank you.
That was one of the early decisions made is there was a proposal to do a multi-year amendments for those folks. We weren't quite certain in terms of what the expenditures would be, and it would be, we wanted to be more prudent and say, let's do it a year by year in terms of looking at and also controlling, better control in terms of expenses. That's why we're doing that.
Yeah, that's actually worked pretty well. We've been able to extend beyond the time we thought we'd need for the Black and Veatch contract.
All right,
as well.
thank you both for the explanation. Thanks.
So kind of in summary, safety is still our number1 focus, and we work very hard with our contractors as well as the safety program that we have. Inter-project coordination for all our shutdowns, I talked about that. That is definitely been challenging for us, and we're doing a lot of work planning and reviewing all of our schedules and shutdowns. Overall, the program is on schedule and on budget. However, we do have a few project slippages on schedule that we're actively addressing. So, and that's all I have. Any questions?
Thank you, Vic. Any questions? Director Villegas?
Thank you, Vic, for tracking it. A lot of this is very technical in nature, and so we as a board oftentimes look to the graphics that you provide, and the financials are helpful in terms of determining whether or not we're on time and on budget, which is a big part of what we have to track. You mentioned earlier about the uncertainty whether or not some of these projects are the percentage of the completion is relative to the actual cost expended or projected cost. And I guess if I can just ask a question about the graphic where you have that comparison, you have the projected cost versus the actual cost. Is it fair to assume then that your projected cost would be predicated on 100% completion of the project at that interval?
So so what we do for projected costs is we take our contractors' construction schedule that they submit, and those schedules are cost loaded. So as they complete work, what we call status it and agree a certain percent complete.
Right.
And that's how the projected costs, so we add all the projects together, and that's how the projected costs are based, and it's based on the contractor's schedule. So if he is behind schedule, of course, we don't pay him for just whatever's in the schedule. We pay him based on what we agree to is really installed in the field. And if it's less than what his schedule said,
So that's very helpful, and I think that's a distinction that, that's a nuance that I think ought to be included in this graphic under the program financials, because I think if we look at the green line and it shows that the actual costs are less than projected, it's easy to assume that, so far so good, right? We're spending less than what we actually thought it was going to be. The problem with that is if they're at 50% completion, the actual cost when they are fully completed might actually be much higher than projected, and that's a problem, right? Potentially. And
Potentially.
So I think that graphic really needs to include further analysis, and I think you alluded to this, I think you picked up on it already, but further analysis and some analysis of the actual completion percentage relative to those two lines, because it's conceivable, in worst case scenario, that if these projections, as are illustrated here in the graphic, everybody's at 50, 60, 70%, and those actual numbers come in, the green line could conceivably overcome the orange line, which is a problem, right? Because now it means we're operating in a deficit. And maybe I'm just simplifying a more complicated formula.
No, we'll take a look and see if we can put something visually up there. It's probably more of a schedule issue with being behind schedule other than a cost.
Got it.
I mean, so we have a bid cost for him to complete all that work. It's just when he's going to complete it. Mm-hmm. So, if it's $1 million, that's all we're going to really pay him, whether he's on schedule or not on schedule.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, you don't seem too worried about it. So I just want to make sure that we're not misinterpreting these two,
Right.
The trajectory of these two. So
Yeah, we'll take a look at that and see if we can improve those graphics. Yeah.
Any other questions for Vic? If not, thanks.
Thanks, Vic.
If I could, Mr. Chair, I just would thank you for the dictionary or list of all the abbreviations. From A to X, everything you ever wanted to know about plans, and I guess...
That's not all of them, by the way.
Not all of them? Okay, this is
They're just a
is this the
small
abridged
subset.
version?
What does X stand for?
Explosion proof. There's XP.
Okay, next item, please.
Acting as Sacramento Regional County Sanitation District and Sacramento Area Sewer District, your district's separate matters. Item number 7, approve the Sacramento Regional County Sanitation District and Sacramento Area Sewer District revised board delegated authorities document.
Good morning, Chair and board members. Christoph Dobson, I'm the Director of Policy and Planning for both districts. And today we're going to be looking a little bit at the board delegated authorities. And that's really just the document that delegates some of the authority down from the board of directors to our district engineer. And it's kind of a balance between being as efficient as possible on the one side and then having the right level of authority staying with the board so that you're making the big policy decisions and the big dollar decisions. And so a little while back, your board asked us to take a look at the delegated authorities document and see if there were any things that we could do to improve efficiency a little bit. And so we took a shot at that, and you have on page 2 kind of a summary of what the changes that we're recommending are. There, I can kind of categorize them. There's several that are just some clarifications. There are a few where we increased dollar limits, essentially from $100,000 to $150,000 in some cases. And maybe just to step back for a moment, we kind of analyzed if we make all these changes, what does it do in terms of the number of board items that come forward? And it looks like with these changes, it would be in the range of about 6 to 10 items per year. Less of those items would come forward to your board. So that gives you a sense of the impact. The other categories of changes, I mentioned the dollar limits. We also made some changes to reporting requirements, basically standardized that to an annual basis. So all the reports would be on an annual basis. And then there's a few changes in the scope of the items, but that's kind of the summary of the types of changes we made. And we have, between myself and Prabhakar, we also have Lisa Voigt here, who worked heavily on this item. So if you have any questions, we should be able to answer them.
Director Nottoli?
Yeah, quickly on page 19, attachment A, it talks about the increase in the aggregate funding limit for studies, I guess educational facilities, and environmental or science issues, and it takes that from $200,000 to $500,000 per year. I guess I'd like to know the thinking behind that. But secondly, does the aggregate total of any single study and/or anything funded under these contracts still remain at $100,000 or less?
Go ahead, I'll let you add.
Yeah, that's correct. So that stays at 100,000. The idea is that we may be doing more studies in the past than in the past, and therefore the higher total limit, but it would stay at 100,000 for an individual study.
At any given time in recent times, then what, you might have 3 or 4 going at one time? Is that, and you're thinking you may have more than that?
Potentially over the course of a year, yeah. This is an annual number.
Okay, is there a requirement and/or a guidance under this that we would be apprised either annually or whatever all the contracts we've entered into? Because this would be delegated authority. So is that delegated authority? Is there some sort of reporting mechanism to the board that's included as a part of that?
Yeah, the reporting is that we will be reporting back at the conclusion of each study in terms of what was done and the budgets and whatnot. Similar to you heard the more technical aspects from Tim, I think a couple of board meetings ago.
Right.
But more say this is what was done, this is who we worked with, and here's a dollar amount, and here's what accomplished. That's the kind of report that you'll get every time on the
So that's at the completion of that.
That's right.
So I guess I would suggest, I know that in some of the other boards I sit on, that there's a listing annual is provided. It's just basically an inventory of.
Which we can do that.
Yeah, it just gives you the.
There are other reporting, so if we would like it to be consistent, we can add an annual reporting limit to this.
Okay, because it gives you a status. Because I mean, some of these may carry more than a year, depending upon the research. When Tim reported, that was time on the river, all that in lab, and so unless there's any objections, I would just suggest that maybe either beginning or ending of a calendar year or fiscal, however you do it, that there'd be some listing of the contracts that have, that are outstanding and or been entered into. So, okay, thanks. That's all I have.
Any other questions for staff? All right, if not, I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Director Nottoli. Second by Director McGarvey. Amanda, can we use the vote screen or not?
No.
Okay, let's do a roll call vote then, please.
Ashby. Bruins.
Aye.
Frost.
Aye.
Guerra. Harris. Suen.
Here. Aye.
Sorry. It's okay.
I'm a little behind.
We know you're here. Do you want to vote yes or no?
You're hearing yes. Okay. Kennedy. Lee.
Aye.
McGarvey.
Aye.
Miklos.
Aye.
Nottoli.
Aye.
Orozco. Peters. Serna.
Aye.
Villegas. Morin. Carr. And motion carries.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, next item, please.
And we're good. Okay. Okay, item number 8 is miscellaneous director and district engineer matters.
A couple of things. First of all, we will not have the next board meeting in October. October 25th meeting is not necessary. This week, coincidentally, it happens, I guess the California State Legislature has adopted a resolution marking this as a Water Professionals Week for so this will be celebrated on a go-forward basis, and we didn't have enough time, but I sent an email out to staff thanking, but next year we'll have some more special recognition items for the staff. It just so happened, Regional San annual employee appreciation event happened last week, and so we also told them that we appreciate the services. Another one is that Director Nottoli is somewhat aware of this thing. There's a robotics league that water is their focus this year, water use and transport. They have game pieces which call pipes, pumps, sludges, and treatment plants, and those kinds of things, which they have to design a robot to move them around to the right places to get the points. So in doing so, they are reaching out to us to do tours. They want to learn about the water treatment and wastewater treatment, And we encourage that because these are our ambassadors. We want to teach them what it is, and also future employees for us. We did tours on 2 Saturdays for 6 teams, total about 50, 60 kids and parents that came through. They were very appreciative of the work. And we also coordinated with the City of Sacramento and the County Water Agency for the tours of the water treatment plant. So they're taking some tours on the water side. And with the City of Folsom. Marcos Yastaki, and he's agreed to doing some tours. I just wanted to let your board know that's happening this year.
Mr. Chair, but just could add, again, just that update just harkens back to a couple of years ago. We hosted, was it the national?
A regional championship here in Sacramento.
It was pretty amazing. Again, I'm sure most, if not every, folks have seen it either on television or reported on, but local teams, we had teams throughout, the western region, folks that had transported either via pickup or some came on the train, all their, their robots and all the equipment to keep them in good repair during the competition. And they came in crates and, and boxes and so forth. And they were out at McClellan. And it was really something to behold, to see not only the competitive nature, but I think the inventiveness and the creativity that is, certainly sparked in our young people, but people of any ages, obviously the parents and the teachers. And it was pretty amazing to see. And I had a chance, and I just would say that Rebecca was there and others, and he actually had family members that were part of the teams, or one of the teams. But again, it's pretty amazing. So I think if you get a chance, I don't know when the competition is going to be. I know they had it in Davis one year, and I don't know if...
Oh, that league is several $1,000s to put the robots together and then work on things.
Yeah, but I don't know if there's going to be another competition. I think just to keep board members involved. Again, if you had a chance on a Saturday or Sunday to go out, if it was being held here, it is not unlike a lot of competitions, but I think the inventiveness and certainly, the future scientists and the inventors are right there on that floor in the midst of all that. So anyway.
There are teams from now 87 or 88 countries compete, ultimately leading to the World Championships in St. Louis. They take the St. Louis football stadium completely and partition it for all these robot games over a 3-day period. Yeah. So these teams that are going through will be one of the 3 different levels that are going to be there competing.
We had a team from Rosemont High School, I think, a year ago that competed and came in, I think, in 2nd or 3rd place in the national competition in St. Louis. So, yeah.
The next one, the last but not least, is Regional SAN has a master intra-agency agreement with its contributing agencies, the Sacramento Sewer District, the City of Sacramento, and the City of Folsom. Those were the only 2 cities in existence when the last master intra-agency agreement was signed. This was in 1996. The district was formed in '73. At the time, only 2 cities existed in the service area, with the City of Sacramento and City of Folsom, besides the county. Those were the signatories to that original agreement. So the current MIA will expire in 2024. There's a number of reasons why we need to start looking at the master intra-agency agreement, not only from the expiration perspective. Master intra-agency agreement binds Regional SAN to its contributing agencies. That's an assurance from a financial side for the Regional SAN. WestSac, on the other hand, we provide services through a contract. Ultimately, they need to become signatory to the master intra-agency agreement when we update it. But we have about $1.3 billion of private, in terms of the market debt, besides the 1.4 that we have with the state. So every time we go through ratings, they would ask, when are you updating it? They don't want to wait until 2024 to figure out that, hey, that hadn't been updated. So we are launching an effort, and the City of Sacramento had a number of things that they would like to see changed. So there's cities that are coming to us and say, we would like to see some things changed. It'll probably take 1.5 to 2 years worth of effort to bring forth an agreement that would meet all the member jurisdictions so that they can approve and finalize. My goal is to start the actual work early next year, and it'll probably take a couple of years. I think maybe more like end of 2019 is when I think getting to the full board for the approvals, and the other cities and the other jurisdictions going through it. Lots of issues in terms of how the old agreements are, and then what new ways that we need to do should be worked at. And I just want to let your board know that we have started internally planning for it, and we'll reach out to the cities and the various jurisdictions for member participation. If you remember, when we did the rate and fee study, the Economic Development Bank had worked collaboratively with all the member jurisdictions working alongside. So I just wanted to let you know that that effort's going to start.
Question. For those cities like Rancho and Citrus Heights and I think Elk Grove that are fully contained within SASD, are you going to have to be working with those cities too, or just with SASD itself?
Which is the one we're going to look at that as one of the first things, because, for example, that's in one way you can say SASD provides a service and we don't need to work with the other cities, but where we have so we rely on the cities to do the permit work because these are the land use jurisdictions. So they collect the fees for regional SAN and SASD. So what if they do not collect the fees, number one, which happens periodically, or they undercollect them? What is the liability for the cities and the districts? Because obviously the regional SAN needs to be made whole in terms of the fee collection. So some of those issues may prompt us to have agreements directly with the cities between regional SAN. That's something I think we're going to be working with on the legal counsel side, and how can we structure that? Okay. So the decision, one way or another, hasn't been made, whether we would only have the SASD, the individual collection agencies, or would it be all member districts, which would mean, City of West Sacramento and City of Rancho. Yeah. Those are all the decisions we're going to ponder through. And I would also expect that toward the end, probably some months' effort, we would need a subcommittee to be formed to, when we have all the issues captured and recommendations, we'll run through the subcommittee so the subcommittee kind of hears. Also, the relationship in terms of staffing relationship between the districts and the county, and all of those need to be, we'll look at it.
Okay, does that conclude your remarks?
That's it. Thank you.
Very good. Next item, please.
All right. Acting as Sacramento Area Sewer District, item number 9 is approve the non-rate and non-fee revenue and reserve use policy.
As Carolyn is going to come up here, there's no presentation. I just wanted to give you a little highlights. If you remember, we had a subcommittee that was formed to look at the regional SAN non-rate, non-fee revenue policy. SASD never had a non-rate, non-fee revenue policy. There was not a sewer lifeline program, any of that type. So we essentially modeled the SASD's version of a regional SAN, where your board was unanimously approved that policy, except the dollars are much smaller. SASD's revenue stream is substantially lower compared to regional SAN with respect to the non-rate, non-fee revenue. Also, for the first time, SASD would be looking at providing some lifeline assistance back to low-income folks, whereas until now, only regional SAN provided that assistance. If you remember, regional SAN provides about $150 a year for families that are earning less than 2 times the federal poverty level. So SASD would probably start with that as a benchmark and provide some assistance, maybe like $25 a year kind of thing. So that's contemplated as part of this policy. I mean, I just wanted to kind of allude some of those highlights. And Carolyn, any highlights that you want to add?
So some of the other highlights that we have are with the other programs, those 4 additional programs, the environmental stewardship programs, the regional economic development, and then the public education programs. And then lastly, the final category is just all other projects or issues that are approved by your board or the district engineer. So the dollar amounts are a little bit different. If I could just highlight those, the first one is the Sewer Lifeline Rate Assistance Program. So the maximum annual allocation would be $350,000. So there would still be a priority made for the funding to provide assistance to low-income customers, with the remaining funding being prorated and distributed among homeless shelters and also housing centers. The Environmental Stewardship Program, the maximum annual allocation is $225,000. And that's the same for the Regional Economic Development Programs. Some of the examples that staff is taking a look at currently, some of the options are reducing or eliminating sewer impact fees for targeted commercial and industrial customers, and then also possibly reducing sewer rates for these customers if it's at all feasible. So staff is taking a look at that. The public education programs, the maximum annual allocation is $100,000, and that's also the same for the other issues or projects. So the total annual revenue allocation will be $1 million. This policy also establishes a reserve of $3 million. However, it cannot be used without the approval of your board, and then we would take the amount that was approved and we could provide it to those categories that I mentioned previously. An annual report will be prepared by the district and then also presented to your board. And finally, this policy establishes the authority for the district engineer to implement the policy, and the effective date would be the date of approval. Are there any questions?
I have a couple of directors that have registered in the queue here to ask questions or address the policy. I have a question. If this is intended to essentially mimic what we did a few months ago at SRCSD, where's the specific reference to the American River Parkway? Because we had a very rich discussion about that, and both in committee and during the final deliberations to adopt that policy, and I don't see it here. So.
Yeah, we purposely kept it a little bit broader in here. Doesn't mean that we won't support that program.
Right.
We just didn't want to put a minimum dollar amounts like what we had on the regional sand side. Again, we can make those changes as regional sand is already making those minimum contributions. Mm-hmm. We can look at to see how that's being used and what the needs are, and then this can serve as a backdrop. Other than forcing so that what the regional sand, the way it was written was it locks up that amount is where the concern was, and so we kind of left it more as a fluid on this one.
So that was just simply an administrative decision to do that. There was no, it was the first time I've ever seen this. So there was some discretion exercised by, I assume, both of you to leave it out as a specific reference.
I'm sorry, would you repeat that again? I didn't quite.
So, if I understand your question, yes, there might have been two that have dollar limits in the regional sand version. Our concern was that we're talking about a significantly smaller total dollar amount coming in, and we just simply felt that it would make sense to keep it a little bit broader and not have a mandated minimum expenditure for such a small dollar amount. That was our thinking.
If it were to be just, I mean, completely the same, because this is not completely the same as what we adopted a few months ago because of that reason. What would be the amount that would be appropriated for or identified for the American River Parkway?
In this one, I don't have a dollar number at this point because we started getting from the member. For example, Parks has asked a request. Right. There was a request came from the County Parks Department for certain things. So it's going to build up to see where the needs are.
Right.
At this point, we may have $100,000 that may be allocated to that. Okay. I think where there's a competing demands between the septic tanks that we wanted, the communities, all these outlying communities that we need to, because there's a lot of grant money that's available in the next 3 years. We want to leverage that. But if the need is there, certainly we would look at this part also.
Yeah, and we had, with all due respect, we had those discussions in committee at least twice about whether or not it made sense to specifically, regardless of the dollar amount, regardless of the percentages, to specifically acknowledge the American River Parkway. And it was set against the backdrop of other competing needs in terms of septic tank abatement. So I understand that. I guess I guess I'm feeling a little bit of a rub here is that the board, correct if I'm wrong, just really hasn't had a chance to vet whether or not it makes for sound policy to make it entirely like the policy that we adopted for the other district in terms of that specific recommendation, regardless of percentage, regardless of amount, for the American River Parkway. Because, quite frankly, when we voted on that as the other district board of directors, you'll recall we had a good discussion, and it was a representation of the value that we place on that specific aspect of our drainage. And that was good. That was a good conversation to have. So I would respectfully request of our executives and of the board to consider keeping it the same, keeping it commensurate with what we did with the other sewer district. And I understand completely that we're talking about lower dollar figures, but I think regardless of the amount of money that we're talking about, having an express consideration for the parkway, especially knowing what we know about its condition today, I think is the right way to go. Director Bruins.
Thank you. I'd like to speak to that in a minute, but my question is, I don't see in here any mention of what the funding source is. Where's the $1 million coming from?
Yeah, it is a interest on reserves, largely, and any miscellaneous leases and those kinds of things that the sale of, so I think it's somewhere, I assume.
Maybe I just didn't see it,
Yeah.
but I looked a couple
So,
times.
for example, background is typically generated from, on the first page number 1, there's under background information, is typically generated from interest earnings on cash and proceeds from sale of assets such as salvaged equipment and scrap metals and those kinds of things. Just on the first page there.
Okay, I just don't see it, but that's okay. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Fourth paragraph.
That's
there.
fourth paragraph.
1, 2, 3. Is it the conclusion? All right, well, anyway, you've answered my question. In respect to Director Serna's comments, I am fine with, I absolutely value the American River Parkway, and I was part of that policy committee for SCSD. I just see the focus of SASD as a little different because we're dealing with, more localized issues, and I'd like to leave it the way it is, knowing that we can take money as needed from this to address it, the needs of the American River Parkway, but I don't know if I want to commit a dollar amount to that specific project out of the SASD side. So I'd rather leave it more general the way you have it. Okay.
Director Frost.
My question relates to the item on regional economic development competitiveness programs. And in that paragraph, it's talking about how the fees will be targeted to commercial and industrial customers. And recently, I just want to share with you that recently I have been approached by folks in the county who are looking at accessory dwellings. And the cost associated with permitting and with getting set up with everything that you have to do to build that accessory dwelling in your backyard, I guess permitting and impact or whatever they have to do, it's like my office did the research, it was $20,000 to $25,000 by the time you get all the plans and permits and sewer connect up and water and electric. And so this is specific, and I want to support businesses and commercial, but I also wonder if we can make it a little bit more general in that category, or if that's even the category. It could be under housing, the first category that goes to homeless and housing. But we do have a segment of our population who are trying to figure out affordable housing, either for seniors or college students or whatever. And a part of that cost has to do with sewer hookups. So my question relates to where does that fit into, or can that fit into this, and where would it fit in?
Yeah. So in terms of the affordable housing, both districts have on the books today where we can waive impact fees for any development that has essentially affordable housing element in it. So if a development has like 10, 15 units, and if there are 2 or 3 units that are specifically geared towards affordable development, we will waive those fees. In the last I looked, I think we gave a report to you maybe 2 board meetings ago or so. They're not building those. Those units are left unsubscribed. There were times that people actually used them all. What we on the regional sand side, or $1 million a year, I think we can provide the benefit for. It's already there. It's separate from this policy. And it's not being used because people are not building them. To address your accessory dwelling, if I remember correctly, there's a state law that was passed that we could not actually charge impact fees, incremental impact fees to those accessory type dwellings. So when they do those things, sewer, we wouldn't be charging impact fees for that because they did it. And I'm looking to Lisa to weigh in.
Right. There's a new law that was passed 2 years ago, and then there was some argument as to whether or not it was even applicable to special districts, but I think that Regional Sand felt it was applicable to them and has implemented the law. And what Prabhakar said is correct regarding sewer connections, at least that for accessory dwelling units, it's not, you can't charge for I think it's an already built accessory dwelling unit.
Whereas
So
there's already a house there, then you're adding a little, like a granny quarter, or however it is termed. Mm-hmm. We won't charge them.
What is the cost associated with that hooking up?
Again, like I said,
6,000 or
but it's
around 6,000.
What we're saying is that we don't have the ability to charge that, so it's not going to be a cost to the homeowner.
There's no cost to it.
It was an attempt to address what you mentioned earlier: affordable housing for seniors, college students, low income, additional units on an already developed property.
So we're not charging for that hookup?
We aren't, no. Other jurisdictions have been for years, and so now they aren't allowed to. I think it's January 1st it becomes effective.
In both districts, I think from 2007, there was a policy that came out from Mary Schneider that said we are not to charge sewer impact fees for accessory dwellings.
So it becomes effective, or did become effective in January, last January?
The districts both have never charged for them for accessory dwelling unit impact fees. A. B, there was a law that became effective 2 years ago, I think, that addressed cities and counties' ability to charge. It left out special districts, so some of us sewer lawyers, we've had a lot of discussions over the last couple of years, have advised their clients that are charging this type of fee that they don't have to, because the law was not specifically addressing special districts. This past legislative session, there was a cleanup bill to make express that special districts also aren't allowed to charge that fee. So it was, I guess, a 3-step answer to your question.
Okay, great. I'm glad I asked.
Yeah.
And so I just would also like to concur, I guess, with Director Bruins relating to, I think the Parkway is a good project now, but keeping it general in nature so that we have flexibility is a preference of mine.
Director Nottoli.
Yeah, a couple comments. I want to just follow on, not get too far askance, but Lisa, so did that law apply then to transportation development fees, library impact fees, and all those subsets of fees?
I can't remember the exact right now. I can get back to you.
Could you send a copy? Just, again, I didn't know about
I think it was specifically for...
I think it may have been utilities.
Yeah, utility fees.
Yeah.
Oh, for water, sewer?
Water, sewer, yeah.
Okay.
I don't think it was as broad as
it wasn't as broad as.
But I can get a copy of it
if
for
you could. Again, I wasn't aware of that, so thanks. And just to the other point, again, we had a pretty robust conversation about SCRSD and how we're going to utilize non-rate, non-fee revenue. And I think that one of the things where I see some of the nexus, certainly to our waterways, is that obviously over the past 40 years with the certainly the advent of the regional plant and the dismantling of at one time, which were sewer plants up and down the river system, particularly the American River, but some along the Sacramento, I trust that ultimately got there. I think there's still some connectiveness to SASD and they entertain, I guess, maybe some options. I understand staff's rationale. Again, this is not a big pot of money, but I think that certainly water quality, environmental stewardship are key pieces, and we have many certainly streams and other waterways that feed into our rivers. But and again, we have sewer lines that connect across those creeks, and and certainly we have a presence, obviously, with the the collection of the water, the sewer water. And so I think that having a discussion to maybe sort that out a bit and allow this board to weigh in, talk about that would be helpful. So I again recognize obviously some different views here this morning. If we want to have a little more conversation when we got certainly a full contingent here, I think it might be helpful as well. Thanks.
Director Bruins.
I just had a question about the septic portion of this. Do we have any idea? And I would think that there's a finite number of how many septic tanks are out there that we want to convert. Do we have any idea of how many there are and how long it would take us to address all of them?
We generally do.
You're sure it's finite?
Well, it is.
I'm hoping it's
I would use the word generally finite. Let me put it this way.
I'm sure there's probably someone out there that,
So looking at our service boundary and near the service boundary around it, right? That's where when we focus, there are roughly between 3,000 and 4,000 septic tanks. For example, there are about 800 or 900 in the Ray Linda area. But when we look at them, not everyone may want to connect to the system because of the cost. There's a state grant program that for sure that has a finite time frame. By 2021, they have roughly $230 million essentially burning holes in their pockets. So we want to get in as much as we can to leverage that money. So looking at the economic status of the community we're trying to connect, they could be anywhere from 75% grant money or 100% grant money. There are 3 of the communities that are nearing can get 100% grant money up to $8 million. All we have to do is put an application and ask and get the community to sign up. Again, they're looking at the rate portion of it too. Once they hook up, then they have to pay the rates part of it. So that's how the focus is, and that's the reason why we're looking at a little bit more heavy focus on that to take care of those. Doesn't mean that we don't balance other things. For example, for Director Serna's point is, if there's a need that for the American River Parkway, for the cleanup where there the contributions that the regional SAN has made exhausted, then obviously this funding is available. We would be looking at that. So we do have, to answer your question, is we have a good number of them, and I don't think we'll be able to connect all of them. But even not only that, this policy, just to connecting the communities, there's a policies that the EMD has. For example, if you are somewhere closer to a sewer system, if your septic tank fails, you must connect them. They don't have a choice. So incurring a $25,000 you got it between the 2 districts, there's about $10,000 impact fee, and then you have other things. This would provide some assistance to them as well.
Yeah, basically, it addresses those that fail.
That's right.
Yes, yeah.
not
Because
only
if they're
connect to
functioning-
the outer side, but also the failed septic tanks where there's, they can hook up.
All right, thank you.
Okay. No more directors have entered the queue here. I'd like to make a suggestion, kind of dovetail off of what Director Nottoli just mentioned. I don't see a tremendous sense of urgency to get this adopted today. What I would like to see, quite frankly, is at least two options presented to this board, and we can vote up or down with those options in front of us, similar to what we did with the policy in front of the sewer district. And what I would respectfully ask staff, if it's the will of this board to postpone a vote today and bring it back, is if it's going to be characterized as being like what we did in for the other district, that it have all the component elements with the relative specificity that was used with that policy, bring that back before the board, and then perhaps have what you've proposed here as the other option.
To answer that, we could actually, I mean, at this point, if you would prefer, option A being $100,000, which is what I said, to American River Parkway, and $100,000 for septic tanks, and not exceed, and then interchangeable. But you can have an option A, and option B is just as it's presented.
The only reason I made the proposal is because I think I asked the question earlier, what would the dollar amount be? So that now I'm hearing that you have a dollar amount.
Yeah, which is, I mean, essentially, if you remember, the old one was, the regional standard was a $1.25 million, right. 500,000, 500,000, interchangeable.
Sure.
So along the same lines, 100,000, 100,000, interchangeable within that.
So you can move
I
it
mean,
back and forth within those categories.
What's it?
You could move it back and forth within those categories.
Yeah, within that.
I'm okay with that.
So mimic that. So that's an option A. If you want to vote on it, and we'll just reflect that in the final policy, essentially mimicking that, so that we doesn't have to come back again.
That would be my motion then.
You know, I'll second that. I'm okay with that.
I'm not sure I understand. I'm sorry.
Basically, the pot's $200,000.
Yeah, so in
So
225, right
part
now
of
there's
this-
$225,000 here.
Okay.
So a minimum of 100,000 would be allocated to American River Parkway cleanup activities. A minimum of 100,000 would be allocated to the septic tank activities.
And then interchangeable.
That's right, they're interchangeable based on the need.
Right.
And so the total part still stays at 225,000.
Right.
It doesn't exceed.
Under environmental stewardship.
That's right, under environmental stewardship.
Right. Got it.
Perfect. Okay,
I'm
we
good
have a
with that.
motion and a second. Let's do a roll call vote, please.
Bruins,
Aye.
Frost,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Kennedy, McGarvey,
Aye.
Miklos,
Aye.
Nottoli,
Aye.
Peters, Serna,
Aye.
Carr, and motion carries.
Great, thank you. And thanks for indulging my request. Okay,
We'll make that reflection as a final policy and just go into effect today.
perfect. Thank you very
As of
much.
today.
Okay, does that conclude our agenda?
That was our
Madam
final
Clerk?
item.
Okay.
So you can take applications by this afternoon? Effective right now.
If we have the application, I'm sure we'll look at it. On
be
that
regular,
front,
get
by the way,
back.
we're developing the policies. We're developing the policies both for the economic development side of it, as well as, I'm already talking with the parks folks in funding certain areas, so it's going.
Great, thank you very much for all the cooperative activity on behalf of both districts now to keep our waterways clean, our parkways clean. Okay, any other comments from board members or staff? If not, we are adjourned.
All right, Steve, good seeing you, bud.